Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Maricopa County News Conference on May 7th from the Unified Command. My name is Fields Mosley. I am the Communications Director for Maricopa County and the Lead Public Information Officer here at the Unified Command. I'd like to thank the reporters who are joining us today to ask some questions. We appreciate your time, appreciate you taking interest in the subjects that we have been able to communicate with you about. Also, for everybody joining us on Facebook and YouTube, welcome. We thank you for being here, and we hope you find the information valuable today and share it if you find it valuable. So many restaurants are going to begin opening next week. A lot of them had shut down completely. A lot of them shifted their business model to more delivery or takeout. Maricopa County's Environmental Services Department has a key role in enforcing the food safety code and taking complaints about food safety whenever it comes to restaurants. So our director from Environmental Services, Darcy Kober, is joining us today to talk a little bit more about that role, what it is and what it isn't under the executive orders passed by the governor. So also today with us, we have our medical director, Dr. Rebecca Sonnenschein. She will answer any questions you have today whenever it comes to the public health sphere. I also have Robert Rowley with us today. He is our Director of Emergency Management for Maricopa County, and he can answer questions about personal protective equipment and distribution of personal protective equipment. So with that, we can go through the logistics here. If you've joined us before, you're familiar with these, so I'll try to be brief. Members of the media, you'll be called upon by our moderator who is in the webinar today. And of course, you can virtually raise your hand in that webinar. Please make sure your microphone is unmuted, so when you're called upon, then we will unmute your mic here, and then you can come on into the webinar and ask your question. Your question is being broadcast by a speaker, and so we can hear it fairly well, but generally I'll repeat the question just to make sure everybody has an understanding of what's being asked. If you have a second question or even a third question, we've always been able to go back around and get those second and third questions. Please be patient, and we'll try to get to those as well. We also have Joanna Molina. She is a public information officer with Public Health, and she's been able to translate the Q&A portion of these press conferences into Spanish, and so hopefully that's helping out our friends in the Spanish language media, as well as any of our viewers, our listeners out there who might be bilingual or Spanish-only speakers. So with that, I'd like to invite Darcy Kober to come up here. She's with Environmental Services. Once again, she's the Director of Environmental Services. Darcy.
Good afternoon. My name is Darcy Kober. That's first name is D-A-R-C-Y. Last name is K-O-B as in boy, E-R. As Fields mentioned, I'm the Director of the Environmental Services Department. The Maricopa County Environmental Services Department has approximately 70 field inspectors who conduct inspections of restaurants and other food establishments to ensure that they are in compliance with the food code. We have over 24,000 food-related permits, and we conduct approximately 57,000 inspections per year. The last several weeks have been difficult for restaurant operators, as many were impacted by the governor's order that suspended dine-in services. Some operators were able to quickly adjust their business model to takeout, drive-through, or delivery service, while others closed temporarily. For those who remain open, our staff served as an educational resource to answer questions as kitchen operations were adjusted. With modification of our inspection protocol to provide physical distancing, our inspection of grocery, retailers, restaurants, and other essential food establishments continued, with approximately 900 inspections per week over the last several weeks. Compliance inspections are critical to verify measures to reduce the risk of foodborne disease transmission and to ensure they are in place. Many restaurants are now opening on Monday, May 11th or thereafter, and Maricopa County will not be requiring a pre-inspection to allow those restaurants to resume dine-in services. Establishments that suspended dine-in service did so at the direction of the governor's order. Therefore, the authority to resume this service also falls under that same authority. It is the responsibility of restaurant operators to adhere to the order. A guidance document for restaurants resuming dine-in service has been provided by the governor's office and can be found on our website at esd.maricopa.gov and clicking on the COVID-19 resource page. County Environmental Services staff will continue business as usual, conducting routine compliance inspections, and responding to food code-related complaints. The food code requires restaurants to have a certified food protection manager on staff with knowledge of foodborne disease prevention, proper disinfection of food preparation and dining areas, and to have a policy in place that requires employees to report illness and to stay at home if they are sick. We also have a reopening checklist for restaurants and other guidance on that same resource page I mentioned. The checklist reminds operators to ensure hot and cold holding equipment is operational, food supplies are wholesome, and have adequate supplies of soap, paper towels, and disinfectant on hand. With these food safety measures in place, we anticipate a smooth transition back to dine-in services. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Darcy, so much for that. At this point, we will open it up for questions. If you have questions of Darcy Kober from Environmental Services, Dr. Rebecca Sonnenschein from Public Health, or Robert Rowley from Emergency Management, this is your chance to ask those questions. So with that, Chad, do we have anybody on the line?
Yes, Brian Webb has a question. Brian, your microphone is self-muted. If you wouldn't mind unmuting it, we can get to you.
There we go. I think Chad, Fields, thank you both. A question for Darcy, please. How do you decide when and where to inspect a restaurant, and how quickly can you get there if there is a complaint?
All right, thank you, Brian, for that question. For those who might not have heard it, when and where, how do you decide to respond to a complaint? How quickly can you respond to that complaint? And it might be relevant to discuss which complaints we respond to as well, so, and how we do that. So Darcy will come up and answer more of those questions.
Thank you for your question. So all of our restaurants are inspected according to what we refer to as a risk category, and that's risk of transmission of foodborne illness. And so we have risk categories between a 1 and a 5, and so a basic operation with maybe limited or no food might be a 1 or a 2. A full-scale restaurant would be between a 3 and a 5. And so we focus our resources and our frequency of inspection based on risk. And so following dine-in services opening, that will continue. In addition to that, we'll obviously double back and make sure that any of the establishments that were closed, that were due for a routine inspection during the time, and during the last few weeks during the COVID pandemic, that we will double back and make sure that those routine inspections are caught up and that they're back on schedule. And then the second part of the question, want me to hold on and we'll go ahead? Okay.
La pregunta fue, ¿cómo deciden cuándo y dónde inspeccionar y qué tan rápido podrían llegar al establecimiento cuando hay quejas? Bueno, la respuesta es que depende qué tipo de establecimiento sea. Hay categorías del 1 al 5. El 1, el 2 pueden ser establecimientos que no son restaurantes completos. El 5 puede ser un establecimiento que ofrece todo tipo de servicio de comida. Entonces, depende cuál es la categoría. Y sobre aquellos que ya necesitan una inspección de rutina que no se había hecho por este brote, ahora regresarán a hacer los inspectores estas revisiones de rutina.
And so I think the second part of that question was Fields asked me to address the types of complaints that we receive. We receive a number of different types of complaints, but we respond to complaints related to the food code. So our authority is under the food code. Our delegation comes to us from the State Department of Health Services, and that can range from complaints about foodborne illness to food contact surfaces not being clean, dining room tables not being clean, folks not washing their hands, any number of items that occur in a kitchen or in a dining situation.
La segunda parte de la pregunta era qué tipos de quejas son las que se someten o a qué es lo que ellos responden. Y aquí se responde a todo tipo de quejas, puede ser desde que el establecimiento tiene comida contaminada hasta que la gente no limpia bien las mesas, ¿no?, en el restaurante, o quizás tampoco están recogiendo lo necesario para tener un ambiente saludable.
Brian, thank you very much for that question. I just became aware, apparently we had some audio issues for those of you joining us on Facebook. I believe we got those figured out right now. If we have any more of those technical issues, we'll certainly try to iron those out on the fly today, but we appreciate you sticking with us today. So once again, Brian, thank you for that question. Chad, do we have another question?
Yes, Christopher Caravello has a question. Christopher, your microphone is live.
Christopher, are you there? Let's try to get back to him in a second, Chad, if we have somebody else waiting.
Sure, we'll move on to Alejandro Barahona.
Okay.
Alejandro, your microphone is live.
Hi, yes, good afternoon, Chad, Fields. My question is, I'm looking through the checklist and I have spoken to a restaurant owner and I do not see a social distancing guideline on the checklist. Is this something we are no longer putting into effect? I mean, they mentioned that they would be spreading out the tables, and so I just wanted to ask why it's not on the checklist.
And just, Alejandro, just to be clear, are you talking about a checklist from the state?
Yes, I'm at the on the Maricopa.gov website, and I'm looking through the reopening food establishment checklist, and I do not see a social distancing check, or requirement, I should say.
I understand. Darcy Kober will address that.
The 6-foot distance requirement would be through the governor's guidance document. And so if you look at the guidance document for restaurants that was provided by the governor's office, they do have a portion on their checklist that says stay at least 6 feet away from others while dining. The reason it's not on the environmental services checklist is because it's not covered in the food code. And so our authority is with the food code, and social distancing or physical distancing is not included in the food code.
La pregunta fue que en la lista de revisiones que han estado observando en el sitio de internet no existe el punto de distanciamiento social en los restaurantes y que si ya no se va a necesitar hacer eso, habrá que se reabran los restaurantes. La respuesta es que ese distanciamiento social viene de alineamientos de la oficina del gobernador y debe de continuar. En este caso, el Departamento de Servicios Ambientales del Condado Maricopa, el código solamente es de comida, de alimentos. Entonces, el distanciamiento social tiene que seguirse basado en los alineamientos que vienen del gobernador.
Good question. Thank you very much. Chad, do we have somebody else?
We do. Juan Juarez has a question. Juan,
Okay.
looks like your microphone is self-muted. If you'll unmute it. There you go.
All right, thank you. It's kind of like a three-part question. I just wanted to verify. You said that you guys had about 70 inspectors currently, and you also mentioned that there was about 900 inspections being done per week during this time. I just wanted to see, what do you expect that your inspections will rise once all the other businesses that were closed temporarily will be reopened? Is anything changing, particularly with the way that you're enhancing new protocols for the inspections? What are those adjustments that you might take once you start doing this, resuming the inspections, really?
Okay. So Darcy Kober can address this, but and how they're doing it. But again, this goes back to the food code, and as she just explained, the food code is different from the executive orders that that have been issued by the governor, and then the resulting guidance that come out of those executive orders. So Darcy will come up and expand on that.
In regards to the number of inspections and how that'll change, it does fluctuate sometimes seasonally, but in general, prior to COVID, we averaged between 1,100 and 1,300 inspections per week. I think typically closer to about 1,200 to 1,300, and so our numbers are down a bit, as you know, since a number of places were closed. On average, about 10 to 11% of our inspections over the last 6 weeks or so have resulted in what we call an ineffective visit, meaning that the establishment was closed for one reason or another. And so I don't expect that all of those would necessarily open up right away on Monday, and so we have heard from some folks that they aren't quite there yet, and so we'll just continue to stay in contact with operators as they open back up and provide those inspections. So I expect it to be maybe a slower climb back up as establishments reopen.
La pregunta fue que si incrementarán el número de inspectores que salen a los restaurantes y qué ajustes se harán ahora que reabran esos establecimientos. Y la respuesta es que al momento fluctúa entre 1,100 a 1,300 inspecciones por semana, lo que hace el Departamento de Servicios Ambientales cuando revisa esas instalaciones. Creen que va a bajar un poquito al principio porque muchos de esos establecimientos no van a reabrir al momento. Ha bajado un 10% cuando ellos han dado visitas. Esos establecimientos están cerrados por la situación que está pasando.
All right, thank you for the question. I understand we're having some more audio issues with Facebook. We do have a microphone hooked up to it, and it may be a little bit scratchy. We've had a little bit of trouble with this particular microphone, so I apologize to those tuning in on Facebook. Hopefully you can still hear it, and we'll keep going from there. So with that, Chad, do we have another question?
We do. Stephanie Inez has a question. Stephanie, your microphone is live.
Thanks. Yeah, this question is for Dr. Sonnenschein. I wanted to know, Dr. Sonnenschein, if you think that we've done enough testing in Arizona, in Maricopa County specifically, to reopen restaurants and other businesses.
So the question, whether or not we should be reopening, and based on the fact of how much testing we have right now. I said this on Tuesday, that the governor is the decision maker. We know executive orders 2020-09, 2020-12, 2020-18. They all make it very clear that the decisions are being made solely at the state executive level. Maricopa County continues to comply with those executive orders, and will continue to move forward from there with what our role is during this pandemic. So I'm sorry, Stephanie, that doesn't totally answer your question about whether or not there is enough testing right now. Dr. Sonnenschein has addressed before that we do wish there was more testing in the community, and as things get ramped up, they've added more testing, but that's not widely available right now. Do we have another question, Chad?
Yes, Brian Webb has a follow-up.
Okay.
Brian, your
There we go.
microphone's live.
Thank you. Just to be clear, if someone has a concern or possible complaint about cleanliness related to COVID-19, is that something restaurant inspectors will investigate, or is that more of a different department? Thank you.
Darcy Kober will take that question about cleanliness in restaurants and if somebody has a complaint.
Yes, we would address cleanliness complaints at restaurants, whether it was related to COVID-19 or any other type of complaint regarding a lack of sanitization of restaurants and a lack of cleanliness in restaurants. And so those can be directed to our staff, and we'd be happy to investigate those.
La pregunta fue que si tiene alguien alguna queja con respecto a la limpieza de un establecimiento y relacionado a COVID-19, que sí que debe de hacer, si esas quejas las recibe el Departamento de Servicios Ambientales. La respuesta es sí. Todo lo que tenga que ver con la limpieza, la comida, sí cae en la jurisdicción del Departamento de Servicios Ambientales.
Brian, thanks for the follow-up question. Chad, do we have any other questions?
We do. Christian Villegas has a question. Christian, your microphone is live.
Hi, a question. Has the county received a list of possible restaurants that have shut down due to possible exposure of COVID-19?
Has the county received a list of restaurants that have shut down due to possible exposure of COVID-19? Darcy can answer that question as well.
No, the Environmental Services Department does not have a list of establishments that were closed or had COVID cases. I believe that was the question, but no, we do not have a list.
La pregunta fue que si el Departamento de Servicios Ambientales ha recibido una lista de los restaurantes que han cerrado por quejas o por alguna situación relacionada a COVID-19. Y no existe una lista, el Departamento de Servicios Ambientales no recibe esta lista.
Thank
you for the question. Chad, do we have another question?
We have a question from Tyrion Morris. Tyrion, your microphone is live.
Hi there. I have a question as a follow-up to the question earlier regarding the checklist. And if distancing is not something that's within the jurisdiction of restaurant inspectors to check on, then who will that be enforced by? And will restaurant inspectors be able to notify the correct people that that should be enforced by?
So the governor has made it very clear that violating the executive orders is a misdemeanor. So I'd have to refer you to local law enforcement or the Attorney General's office. Chad, do we have another question?
That was the last question.
All right. If there are no other questions today, I thank you very much for your time. It was great to have Environmental Services with us today to explain a little bit more about their role and how their role doesn't cover everything in the executive orders, but they certainly have a large role to play in inspecting restaurants and making sure these establishments are safe as they move forward with opening. So thanks again for joining us today. We'll let you know when the next availability is, and have a great weekend, everybody.